Sometimes, the biggest lessons in life do not arrive like a clap of thunder. They do not come announced by trumpets or carried on the winds of a great storm. Instead, they come quietly, like the first light of dawn creeping over the horizon. They are found in the simplest of things. A shared cup of tea, the slow unfurling of a flower petal, or a quiet conversation on a porch swing. You know, we spend so much of our lives chasing the loud and the fast, believing that significance is measured in volume and speed. But often, the most profound truths are waiting for us in the silence, in the small moments we overlook in our rush to get somewhere else, to become someone else. Life's most important wisdom is a whisper, not a shout. Anna was a girl who lived in a world of shouts. Her life was a calendar filled with deadlines, a symphony of ringing alarms, and a constant race against the clock. She was always striving, always pushing to be the best student, the best daughter, the best at everything she did. Her report cards were filled with perfect scores, and her walls were adorned with certificates of achievement. To the outside world, she was the very picture of success, a bright star, climbing higher and higher. But inside, that star was beginning to flicker. A deep, quiet tiredness had settled into her bones, a weariness that no amount of sleep could seem to cure. Her smile, once so genuine, had become a mask she wore for others. The pressure to be perfect was a heavy coat she could never take off. Every test was a mountain to conquer, and every project was a battle to be won. Anna believed that if she just worked a little harder, stayed up a little later, and pushed herself a little further, she would finally feel a sense of peace. She thought happiness was a destination, a prize waiting for her at the finish line of her next great accomplishment. But the finish line kept moving. With every goal she achieved, a new, more difficult one would appear in its place. The joy of victory was fleeting, quickly replaced by the anxiety of the next challenge. She was running a race with no end in sight, and her heart was growing heavier with every step. This constant striving had created a hollowness inside her. It was a strange kind of emptiness, one that was filled with noise and activity, but devoid of real joy. She would look at her friends laughing, enjoying a simple walk in the park, and wonder why she couldn't feel the same lightness. Her world had become a checklist of tasks to be completed, and she had forgotten how to simply be. The vibrant colors of her life were fading into shades of gray, muted by the relentless demands she placed upon herself. Anna was winning at the game of school, but she was losing something far more precious along the way. Herself. The whisper of her weary heart was growing louder, begging her to stop, to breathe, to listen. One evening, after a particularly grueling week of exams, Anna's mother looked at her with gentle concern. She saw the dark circles under her daughter's eyes and the tension in her shoulders. "Anna," she said softly, "your grandmother has been asking for you. Why don't you go spend some time with her in the village? The fresh air will do you good." Anna's immediate reaction was to refuse. The village? It was the opposite of everything her life was about. It was slow, quiet, and uneventful. There were no libraries open late, no high-speed internet for her research, and no competitions to win. It felt like a step backward, a detour from the path she had so carefully planned for herself. Her grandmother's home was a place of memories. A small house nestled among rolling green hills and whispering trees. Anna loved her grandmother dearly, but the thought of being there for more than a day filled her with a sense of unease. What would she do with all that time? The silence of the countryside felt intimidating, a vast emptiness she didn't know how to fill. Her life was structured around productivity, and the village offered none of the metrics she used to measure her worth. Leaving the city felt like surrendering, like admitting that the race was too much for her. She was a sprinter, and the village was a place for a slow, leisurely stroll. Despite her hesitation, the exhaustion in her soul was undeniable. The idea of waking up without an alarm, of having a day with nothing on the schedule, held a tiny, secret appeal. Perhaps her mother was right. Perhaps a short break wouldn't derail her entire life. With a heavy sigh of resignation, she packed a small bag, leaving her textbooks and laptop behind. It felt strange, like leaving a part of herself behind. As the bus pulled away from the chaotic city, she watched the tall buildings and busy streets give way to open fields and wide-open skies. With each mile that passed, a small knot of tension in her chest began to loosen, though she would not have admitted it to anyone, not even herself. Arriving in the village was like stepping into another world. The air smelled of damp earth and blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the city's exhaust fumes. Her grandmother greeted her with a warm embrace that seemed to melt away some of the coldness that had settled in her heart. The house was simple and comforting, filled with the scent of baking bread and dried herbs. There was no television blaring in the corner, only the gentle sound of the wind rustling through a thaw through the leaves outside. Anna felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. This quiet place was a haven, but it was also a challenge. It was a place where she could not run, a place where she would have to face the quiet weariness she'd been trying so hard to outrun. The first few days in the village were a struggle for Anna. She woke up early out of habit, her mind already racing, searching for a task to complete. But there were no tasks, there were no emails to answer, no chapters to read, no problems to solve. The silence felt deafening, and the slow pace of life felt like a form of torture. She watched her grandmother move through her day with a calm, unhurried rhythm. She would tend to her garden, knead dough for bread, and sit on the porch, simply watching the clouds drift by. To Anna, it seemed like a waste of precious time. She felt restless and fidgety, unsure of what to do with her hands, with her mind. Her grandmother, wise and observant, noticed Anna's unease. She did not lecture or scold. Instead, one morning, she led Anna to a small, neglected patch of earth at the back of the garden. It was a small, forgotten flower bed, filled with weeds and dry soil. "This little patch needs some love," her grandmother said, her voice soft like soil. "I am getting too old to care for it properly. Perhaps you could help me bring it back to life." Anna looked at the patch of dirt and felt a familiar urge to conquer it. This was a project, a task. She could fix this. She could make it perfect. She agreed immediately, eager to have something to focus her restless energy on. Her first attempts were impatient and forceful. She attacked the weeds with a vengeance, yanking them out of the ground with aggressive tugs. She tilled the soil with hurried, powerful strokes, determined to prepare the bed as quickly as possible. Her grandmother watched her from the porch, a gentle smile playing on her lips. She did not interfere. She simply let Anna work, letting the earth itself be the teacher. After an hour of frantic activity, Anna was sweating and exhausted, but the flower bed looked even more chaotic than before. The soil was uneven and she had accidentally uprooted a few small dormant bulbs in her haste. Frustration began to bubble up inside her. That evening, as they sat on the porch, her grandmother spoke. "The earth does not respond to force, my dear," she said, her eyes twinkling. "It has its own language, its own rhythm. You cannot command a seed to grow, you can only invite it. You must listen to the soil, feel its needs. You must be gentle. It is a partnership, not a battle." Anna listened, her frustration slowly giving way to curiosity. A partnership? The idea was foreign to her. She had always seen life as a series of obstacles to overcome, not as a dance to be learned. The next day she returned to the flower bed not as a conqueror, but as a student, ready to listen to the language of the earth. Anna's daily routine began to change. Each morning she would go to the small flower bed, but her approach was different. She started by simply sitting beside it, feeling the morning sun on her skin and listening to the buzz of the bees. She learned to pull the weeds, gently, easing them from the soil, so as not to disturb the roots of the plants she wanted to keep. She watered the ground, not with a powerful hose, but with a small, gentle watering can, watching as the water slowly seeped into the thirsty earth. It was slow, meticulous work, the kind of work she would have once dismissed as inefficient. But here, in the quiet of the garden, it began to feel different. It felt like a conversation. She planted tiny seeds, pushing them into the dark, cool soil with her fingertips. Her grandmother showed her how to give each seed enough space, explaining that they needed room to grow, just like people. In the beginning, nothing happened. The patch of earth looked just as it had before, a flat expanse of brown. The old Anna would have been impatient, frustrated by the lack of immediate results. She would have wanted to dig up a seed to see if it was growing. But guided by her grandmother's quiet wisdom, she learned to wait. She learned to trust that beneath the surface, unseen and unheard, life was stirring. Her daily visit to the garden became a ritual of hope and patience. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. A tiny green shoot pushed its way through the soil, then another, and another. Anna felt a thrill of excitement that was purer than any grade she had ever received. It was a quiet, deep joy. She had not forced this life into existence. She had simply created the right conditions for it to emerge. She watched, fascinated, as the sprouts grew taller each day, unfurling their first tender leaves. She learned to recognize the subtle signs of their needs. A slight wilting of a leaf meant they were thirsty. A yellowish tint might mean they needed more sun. She was no longer just a caretaker. She was a guardian, a partner in their growth. The garden became her teacher. It taught her that growth cannot be rushed. It taught her that small, consistent acts of care are more powerful than grand, forceful gestures. It taught her the beauty of the process itself, not just the final outcome. She found a deep sense of peace in the simple act of nurturing these small plants. Her mind, once a whirlwind of anxieties and to-do lists, grew still. The constant need to achieve was replaced by a gentle desire to nurture. She was not competing with anyone. She was not trying to create the best garden. She was simply helping life to flourish, and in doing so, she was allowing herself to flourish too. As Anna's flowers began to bud, her conversations with her grandmother deepened. The old woman had a way of weaving life's biggest lessons into simple stories drawn from the world around them. One afternoon, as they watched a farmer plowing his field in the distance, her grandmother spoke. "Look at that farmer," she said. "He plows the field, he plants the seeds, and then he waits. He cannot make the sun shine or the rain fall. He trusts the seasons. He knows that his work is to prepare the ground, and the rest is not in his hands. He does not worry every day, digging up the seeds to check on them. He has patience because he has faith in the process. Life is much the same, Anna. You do your part, and you let life do its." Another day, a small bird was building a nest in a tree near the porch. They watched as it flew back and forth, carrying one tiny twig at a time. It was a slow, laborious process. That little bird, her grandmother mused, is building a home. It does not try to carry the whole tree branch at once. It takes what it can carry, one small piece at a time. Each trip adds something small, but eventually those small efforts create a safe and beautiful home. We often think we must achieve everything at once, that we must carry the heaviest load. But true strength is in consistency. It is in doing the small things, day after day, that we build a life of meaning. Anna absorbed these words like her thirsty flowers absorbed the rain. The stories were simple, yet they resonated deep within her. She saw herself in the impatient person who wanted to dig up the seeds, in the one who wanted to carry the whole branch at once. She was beginning to understand that her constant striving was not a sign of strength, but a sign of fear. Fear of not being good enough, fear of falling behind. Her grandmother's words were like a gentle hand on her shoulder, telling her it was okay to slow down, to trust, to build her life one small, meaningful piece at a time. The world of nature was not in a hurry, and yet everything was accomplished. The most powerful lesson came one evening as they were preparing dinner. Her grandmother was talking about raising Anna's mother. "When your mother was a baby," she said, her hands busy shelling peas, "she did not walk on her first day. She did not speak in full sentences in her first month. She grew at her own pace. I fed her, I held her, I kept her safe. I celebrated her first smile, her first crawl, her first word. I did not compare her to the neighbor's child who walked earlier. I knew her journey was her own." Why are we so patient with a child's growth, but so impatient with our own? We must learn to be a gentle mother to ourselves, Anna. Nurture yourself, and trust that you will bloom in your own perfect time. The day came when Anna had to return to the city. As she stood before the flower bed, it was transformed. It was now a vibrant tapestry of color, with bright marigolds, delicate daisies, and fragrant roses all blooming together. Each flower was different, each had grown at its own pace, but together, they created something beautiful. It was not a perfect manicured garden from a magazine. It was a little wild, a little imperfect, and utterly alive. It was a reflection of her own journey. The garden was a testament to the power of patience, care, and allowing things to unfold in their own time. It was honestly the most beautiful thing she had ever helped create. Saying goodbye to her grandmother was different this time. It was not a goodbye to a slow, boring world, but a goodbye to a sanctuary that had healed her. She hugged the old woman tightly and whispered, "Thank you." Her grandmother simply smiled and pressed a small, hand-painted stone into her palm. On it was a single word, breathe. It was a small reminder of the lessons she had learned, a tangible piece of the peace she had found. As the bus carried her back toward the city, she did not feel the familiar dread. She felt a quiet strength, a calm that came from within. The city skyline appeared on the horizon, but it no longer looked like a battlefield. It looked like a place where she could now walk, not run. Anna returned to her life, but she was not the same person who had left. She still worked hard in school, but she no longer measured her worth by her grades. She took breaks. She went for walks without a destination. She listened to music, not to fill the silence, but to enjoy the melody. She learned to say no. She began to treat herself with the same gentle patience she had given to her flowers. She realized that life was not a race to a finish line, but a journey to be experienced. True happiness wasn't a prize at the end. It was found in the small moments, in the process of growing, in the quiet act of being present. Each of us has our own garden to tend, our own inner world that needs care and attention. We live in a world that shouts, that demands speed and perfection. But growth is a quiet process. It happens in its own time, at its own pace. Like Anna's flowers, we all bloom differently. Some of us are early spring crocuses pushing through the last of the snow, while others are late summer roses blooming in the warm, gentle sun. There is no right or wrong timeline. The real beauty is found not in how fast we grow, but in how we care for ourselves along the way. So let us be patient. Let us trust the process. Let us give ourselves time and space to blossom in our own beautiful, unique way. What seeds of patience are you planting in your own life today?